So you probably recognize this guy, right? He's Momotaro, the Peach Boy, super famous in Japan, one of their most beloved heroes. But what if I told you the story you think you know is just scratching the surface?
Yeah, it's a classic. Pretty much every kid in Japan grows up with this story. It's got all the good stuff. Good versus evil, bravery, teamwork, you know the drill.
So, let's break it down. You've got a boy who, literally comes from a giant peach. He teams up with a dog, a monkey, and a pheasant. They go on this epic quest to an island, take down some scary demons called Oni, and come back loaded with treasure. Sounds like a perfect fairy tale, right? Simple, heroic, but hold on. There's one little question that when you ask it, kind of blows the whole thing wide open.
And that question is, who exactly was the demon? Because when you start digging into that, the whole fairy tale just unravels. The identity of this Oni has changed so much over time, and every time it changes, the story of Momotaro becomes something totally different.
Okay, so let's get into the first big twist, maybe the most shocking one. We're going to jump to the 1940s, during World War II. This is where our fairy tale hero, Momotaro, trades in his storybook clothes for a military uniform and becomes a full-blown soldier for the Japanese Empire.
And we're not talking about some simple cartoons for kids here. No. These were major state-sponsored animated films. The Japanese Navy Ministry itself commissioned them. Their purpose? To be powerful propaganda, plain and simple. They were made to shape how people thought and felt about the war. And you can actually see the government's investment growing as the war went on. Look at this. The first movie, from 1943, it's pretty short, just 37 minutes. But the sequel? The one that came out in 1945, right at the end of the war when things were really dire, it's over double the length. In fact, it was Japan's first ever feature-length animated movie. That's a huge deal. So you have the same hero, Momotaro, but he's telling two completely different stories. And those stories perfectly mirror how Japan's fortunes were changing in the war. The 1943 film, it's all about glorious victory, made back when winning still felt possible. But fast forward to 1945, and all that optimism is just gone. It's replaced by this very serious message about duty and sacrifice.
And they weren't subtle about who the demons were in that first film. Not at all. Newspaper ads literally ran with the slogan, "Pearl Harbor equals Oni Island." Just think about that. They were directly reframing the attack on Pearl Harbor as this heroic, mythical battle, with the Allied forces cast as the monsters that Momotaro had to defeat.
But wow, what a difference 2 years makes. This is the message from the sequel. That whole idea of a glorious victory and coming home a hero, it's completely gone. Instead, you have Momotaro giving this speech to his troops, basically preparing them to die. The story had transformed into a tool to make a fight to the death seem noble, even necessary.
So, this whole wartime propaganda version, that's a pretty modern twist on the tale. But it makes you wonder, where did the legend even come from in the first place? To find the original demon, we've got to rewind the clock, way back before the 1940s.
All right, let's head to what is now Okayama Prefecture. This is where one of the oldest versions of the story is said to have come from. And here, we find out it wasn't a fairy tale to begin with. Not at all. It was more like a foundational myth.
So in this super old version, the demon isn't some horned monster. He's a person, a guy named Ura, a prince from Bakje, which was a kingdom in ancient Korea. So we're talking about a real-world rival, a powerful figure who came over, built a fortress, and basically took control of the area.
And if the demon was a real person, well, so was the hero. He wasn't some magical boy from a peach. He was an imperial prince, Kipitsuiko, which means his demon slaying was really a conquest. This completely reframes the story, right? Suddenly, the fairy tale looks a lot like a political legend, a story created by the winners to justify taking over by painting their enemy as a monster.
But wait, it gets even more complicated. Okayama isn't the only place that claims to be Momotaro's hometown. If you go just across the water to Kagawa Prefecture, you'll find a totally different version of the story, and this one is way more recent.
Yeah, see, the Kagawa version isn't some ancient myth. It's shockingly modern. You can trace it right back to 1914, when the Prime Minister just happened to visit and made a comment about a local train station's name. That little remark inspired a local teacher who then basically created a whole new Momotaro legend, just for his region, and he published it in 1930.
And in this version, the demon is something else entirely. It's not a monster, it's not a foreign prince, it's pirates. A much more down-to-earth enemy, right?
These pirates were apparently causing all sorts of trouble from their base on a nearby island. And the hero? He's a local prince named Wakatake Hiko. So, let that sink in. The Kagawa story wasn't passed down for centuries. It was invented in the 20th century. It became this incredible tool for building a sense of community, creating a local identity, and, you guessed it, bringing in tourists to see the real Demon Island.
Okay, so after all that, after peeling back all these different layers, what does it all mean? What have we learned from this one supposedly simple story?
Well, for one thing, Momotaro isn't just one character. He's so many different things. He's the fairy tale hero for kids, he's a propaganda tool for a nation at war, he's a mythical conqueror for an ancient clan, and he's a local mascot for a modern town. Each version is tailored to fit whatever the storytellers needed at the time.
The story of Momotaro is like a mirror. It changes over time, and it reflects whatever is going on in Japan. Its values, its fears, its goals. Who the hero is, and maybe even more telling, who the demon is, that tells you everything you need to know about the people telling the story.
And that's the big takeaway, isn't it? Stories are never just stories. They're these incredibly powerful tools. We use them to make sense of our past, to explain why things are the way they are right now, and even to build the future we want. The stories we think are simple, well, they often hold the most complicated truths about us.
So that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, long after you're done with this. What are the stories we're telling today? Who are our heroes? And maybe the most important question of all, who are our demons?